Let me express my heartfelt thanks and appreciation to Datuk Menteri Besar for hosting this dinner reception. And coincide, the Jerohan, you must know this, because he just assumed the chief ministership, and this is one of his first official function of that level. And more pertinent is the association with the cause of Islam and democracy. Now, personally, I'm, of course, touched by his remarks, expression of support, and profoundly moved by his passionate and spirited condemnation of the criminal and judicial process in this country. Just for the record, Azmin Ali himself had been a victim of this flawed process, having been arrested back in 1998 after my sacking. And the only crime which was considered major that he committed was to be my staff for years. But to his credit, Azmin never faltered, much as they tried to use this special branch phraseology, turn him over, and in consequence, he was slapped with some frivolous and vexatious charge. Now, he made reference in this theme of his speech to the remarks of Fadil Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi on justice and moderation. Qaradawi is, of course, the world's leading authority on Islamic jurisprudence. But what is pertinent for us to note is that this leading scholar of Islam is also a leading champion for the cause of justice and freedom. I made reference in my recent speech in Istanbul to the tremendous challenge, if not calamity, affecting the Muslim world. And that is probably more the reason why we need to be more assertive and committed to support this new narrative that Islam is not about reacting to the West or condemning the excesses committed by all quarters, but to establish a new narrative that we ourselves must be committed to the notion of freedom and justice. That explains why I took this initiative after discussing with friends, and I must take note my special discussions with the then Prime Minister, who is now President of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, the former President of Indonesia, Burhanuddin Habibie, who actually hosted the first preparatory meeting in Jakarta. And these luminaries, political leaders, of course, are known for their commitment to reform and democracy. But a special note of thanks, as alluded to earlier by Datuk Menteri Besar, is to Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and even to Mr. Sasakawa himself, because when I visited him with Jero Hanyu, expressing the need to support a Muslim initiative to articulate with confidence our commitment to reform and democracy, and not just to react to the so-called Western onslaught, to all the problems with fanatics and extremists. And I am, of course, extremely pleased that Sasakawa Peace Foundation is not only supporting the meeting or the conference here in Petaling Jaya, but more significant is a commitment to ensure that this project continues and that we can finally, at least, establish a significant, relevant forum for Muslim Democrats. I've discussed this with Sheikh Qardawi, Sheikh Rashid Ghanousi of Tunisia, from Al-Nahda, and of course, problems affecting these countries, with recent elections in Tunisia that would not render it easy for them to travel. But nonetheless, I look forward to their continued cooperation. But more so, I must register here our thanks and profound gratitude to Jerohanyu and the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, the Habibi Center in Indonesia, SETA in Turkey, and you can hear more from Dr. Taha tomorrow. Friends, I will not deliver. I don't intend to deliver a keynote speech. In fact, I was surprised that the Menteri Besar ignored all state protocol arrangement, both in terms of sitting and also speech. Of course, I am touched by his sentiment, but more so it reflects this new culture and mood for reform in this country, in this state. I think it is only fair for me to suggest that despite the turbulent beginnings, we have seen now the administration very committed to commit themselves as truly a government of reform. Yeah. It's not just a government replacing the old administration, but a government committed to the reform agenda, a democratic government, and democracy means respecting participatory process, consulting political leaders, civil society, and public at large. More transparent in policies, and more tolerant and moderate their outlook, although he has been lamenting the temporary problem that he has, having to persuade Ma'is and the Mufti to take a similar moderate line. Good luck to him. Now, in the last few conferences, including the one major international conference organized by ABIM last year on Islamic resurgence, I made reference to a great scholar, intellectual, luminary, and prominent Syrian intellectual in Arab political history, Abdurrahman al-Kawakibi. Now, the term Muslim Democrat might not have been in fashion then, but I'm convinced that al-Kawakibi's ideas and his struggles for freedom and justice would place him in the pantheon of Muslim reformists who have made a great impact on the Ummah. There are many parallels to the harassment and intimidation that was set upon him because of his fervent criticism of the powers that be to the repression and oppression that we are witnessing today in much of the Muslim world. Like a true Muslim Democrat, he advocated modernity and rejected taqleed in the tradition of Iqbal's reconstruction of religious thought in Islam. He urged that tyranny and despotism be fought with ideas and education. I hasten to say that I personally was inspired by his advocacy of civil society, by embracing the European principles of freedom and justice while remaining critical of the wayward ways of the West in terms of religion and morality. And incidentally, the term Madani that I picked and popularized from Masyarakat Sivil to Madani was a term coined by Sheikh Muhammad Abdu, Al-Mujtama Al-Madani. I cleared it with the Sheikh Taha Jabir Al-Alwani, and it's relevant for me to promote, and now it becomes the concept of Madani. It can only be applicable in an environment of reform and freedom. You can't have a civil society, a vibrant discourse on subjects if you have that fear of being condemned either as kafir or intolerant of some other views. Now, what is relevant here in the context of Al-Kawakibi's articulation of the need for reform is that even back then in the 19th century, his belief in the importance of establishing a global organization of Muslim intellectuals to work towards reform of the Ummah. And that continues to resonate with us. Unfortunately, the Muslim world continues to bear the negative manifestations of a civilization in decay. Again, to use the phrase of Marhum Ismail Faruqi, the Malayas of the Ummah. Just as what Al-Kawakibi had postulated, freedom, democracy, and justice remain for much of the Ummah a mirage. Poverty, low levels of illiteracy, and appalling conditions of living still remain the hallmarks of the masses in the Muslim world. Muslim elites perpetuate their power and wealth in a culture of corruption at the expense of the rest of society. So tomorrow's proceedings must address these overarching issues. Some quarters say that the Arab Spring has now turned into the Arab winter. There is still room for debate, but what we cannot run away from is the fact that the Muslim Ummah still has a long way to go in this quest for freedom and justice. I am in full agreement with the view that justice and moderation should always prevail over injustice and extremism. I register the presence of our dear brother, Dr. Surin Pitsuwan, all the way from London. It's a crazy man with such regime. You can understand why Surin now spends most of his time outside Thailand. Now, whether this will be translated into reality will depend on the efforts and resolve of all stakeholders. In this regard, the World Forum for Muslim Democrats must, among other things, play a proactive role in advancing this quest. Now, we do not condone fanaticism of extremism in any form. I think this has been alluded to very clearly by Datuk Menteri Besar. But we must also caution against the intolerance, the failure to respect differences, because Islam and the Muslim community cannot expand without creative thought, without tajdeed. And this is not necessarily a new formulation, because this has been in the tradition of Abdu to Afghani to Iqbal and the rest. So it is most shameful, especially when leaders who are considered to be ulama as well choose to remain silent when speaking out against excesses. I would go further in saying that As these actions are carried out in the name of Islam, we must categorically condemn them or else run the risk of being complicit in the discriminate killing, public execution, and forced conversions. I must apologize to Jerohanyu for being the convener and yet in absentia, because in the last few weeks I'm embroiled in this problem of persecution and having to attend the federal court hearings and submissions. Tomorrow morning, for example, I have to be there from 9 to 1. So inshallah, I can leave immediately from federal court to participate in the last probably few sessions. This is really unfortunate because we could not, I did not know earlier of the dates, and it's very difficult for international conference to keep on changing the dates, and particularly people with like Jerohanyu and Dr. Suri Pisuwan, it's just impossible to get the next date this year. And they are all booked until 2016, I think. So I'm actually extremely appreciative of the fact that they are here, show their solidarity, but I must, with profound regret, say that I'm not able to participate in the manner I should do, because this has been my and my team's brainchild for years. We thought that others have a forum, and all that Muslim meetings care about is how to respond to fanaticism and to Western onslaught every time there's a reaction against the design of others. Why can't we, for now, formulate or begin our own narrative among those committed to the principle of democracy, freedom, and justice, which means it is an open-ended. And we have agreed to invite non-Muslim scholars also to participate and share their views and their concerns. I know I'll be criticized yet again on this. How can you talk about Muslim Democrat and you allow non-Muslims to participate? But when I was Deputy Prime Minister and I organized a conference, Islam and Confucianism, the same ulama seemed to support me and say it's a brilliant idea. But now, because I am Mr. Opposition, when I organize such functions, I'm now condemned as being pluralistic. So I'm not going to engage in the domestic debate here. But it is important for us to realize, if you do not allow for space for discourse, then there will be very little sense in promoting the ideals of justice or democracy or freedom in this country. We should not train Muslims to be extremely sensitive or under siege. The siege mentality is a problem of the West attacking us, the problem of Selangor and Penang being Christianized, the problem of allowing the Bible to be a Malay, then the Malays will all be confused, the problem of touching dogs, immediately we become doggy. I think we have a problem. I do not share that sentiment because I believe what is required is a clear commitment, reassertion of our faith in Islam and ethical, moral values and principles. If we have that issue, the problem is not about dogs, or about Bibles, or about church, or about Hindu temples. The problem is to ensure that Muslims set good example, qudwa hasana, in terms of the fact that if you entrust a Muslim in office, he will conduct his affairs justly. He is not going to be corrupt, and he will not abuse his position. Unfortunately, this issue is not addressed. We don't address the fact that billions of dollars are stolen from the public purse. I have not heard much fatwas on the subject. But what we are more keen to do is on the what we consider as trivialities. I do not condone any sort of excesses because Islamic rule is clear, but I think you must show enough tolerance. I have not heard any judgment whether students should be free to express themselves, like what we saw in the University of Malaya last few days. If you assemble more than 5 in the University of Malaya, then it's considered an unlawful assembly. And I think Jirohanyu was surprised. He was thinking that I'm talking about some developments in the 17th century. I said, no, Mr. Jiro, I'm talking about University of Malaya last week. So let me conclude with a short quote from Allama Muhammad Iqbal, very known to Surin Pisuan. I admire his tenacity because he grew up in the tradition of the Pondok in Patani and went to Harvard and still maintained his dignity, his character as a Muslim. Now, a quote from Iqbal, which is going to be very controversial in Malaysia. So I'm saying, don't attack me, attack Iqbal. No, Iqbal said this: there are no Wahhabis, Shi'is, Mirzais, or Sunnis in Islam. Fight not for the interpretations of the truth when the truth itself is in danger. It is foolish to complain of stumbling when you walk in the darkness of night. Let all come forward and contribute their respective shares in the great toil of the nation. Let the idols of class distinctions and sectarianism be smashed forever. Iqbal. You want me to translate and get me into trouble? Let Malaysia Queenie do that. So thank you very much again to Jirohanyu. Really. Without Sasakawa Peace Foundation's support, it would be very difficult for us to proceed. If I had, of course, we can choose to persuade Datuk Menteri Besar to support, but then he will be attacked of now promoting the Anwar program. So I'm just asking him, the only thing we are asking the Menteri Besar to do is to host this dinner. And the rest is of course, funded by the sponsors of the organization. And let me thank all of our friends present tonight. And please do give the support for this noble cause to promote freedom and justice for a forum for Muslim democrat, which is really a major deficit in the Muslim world. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.